every day, sitting in front of me while I make these YouTube episodes, sits a picture of my lovely dad. That's my dad, who very sadly passed away 2 years ago. And when I was a teenager, and I was writing musicals, I can remember I had a go at writing Tom Brown's School Days. Didn't get very far, but wrote a little bit of it. My dad said to me one evening, "You should have a look at Silas Marner. It's a lovely story." And I didn't. But I remembered the name. It was an odd name, and I remembered it. And so, many, many years later, I think 2014, I think that's when we did it. 2013 is when we started to do it. We put it on. Here we go. Silas Marner by the Oasis Youth Theatre. Now I'll tell you before we get to the end of this, it was a promenade production. It was probably the most mature promenade production I've done. It was a beautiful production, as all the promenade productions were. It was in our new theatre. It was helped so much by one of the guys coming back to be involved in the youth theatre. We'd lost a lot of the older people again. We were going through a new flux, and this new group, who basically provided the outline of the cast for I Love You Mum later on. This new cast were aided and abetted so much by Simon Froud returning to youth theatre. He'd gone off to work with Apple. He played me in Graham in the award-winning production that we did, where we got to the British final for the first time. So right at the end of Oakland's youth theatre. I think that was probably 2007. So 7 years later, Simon phones me and says, "I've decided I don't want to do Apple anymore." He was working on the Genius Bar. "I want to go into the arts, and I want to come back to youth theatre to just get some experience and get my hand back in." And wow, how amazing it was to have someone like Simon, who's now working with Bryony Kimmings. He's doing really well. He came back and he worked with us on this production. He was in it as well. And I can remember him saying to me, at that point I was cycling to and from youth theatre, and I can say on one of the cycles home, he said, it's great how we work at OYT because it's all so organic. We don't know what's going to happen and it just grows. And that was a lovely way of describing our work. And another thing I'll say about Silas Marner, that lovely poster, Chris Webb, great poster, was that when I left Oasis a few years later, Ian Golding, who was our principal, said to me, "Silas Marner was the production I will remember as being the best." And he said there were a lot of good ones, but Silas Marner is the one that stands in my mind. And as well as Simon working on this production, we were great fortune to have a guy called Ross, who was like a Nordic god, just looked so perfect for this role and was a wonderful Silas. So there's Ross with the girl who played his daughter, Charlotte. And it was this was in our brand new theatre, so it was a lovely first time we'd done a promenade here. This is us rehearsing without the audience. I have a strong feeling that's Simon, and there's James, who was significantly older, but all the others were kind of year 8, 9, 10, 11. Maybe Emily was a little bit older than that. And here again is the puppetry, and I talked about the hand to mouth and how influential they were. Puppet designed by Richard in Silas Marner, who played the baby that's found by the drug addict mum, and just phenomenal themes. And I wanted to write this play as a verbatim, in the style of a verbatim play. So took the novel and used only those words. That was my rule. And it's a beautiful adaptation. It would work fantastically in an English class where you're introducing the script to students, because basically it's an abridged version of it, but it gets through the whole story. And wow, what a story it is, and wow, what a promenade production it makes. There we are with the audience. You can begin to get some sense of the atmosphere. Richard again designed this tree. and it's either Sam Glass or Amy doing the lighting. I'm really sorry, but I'm not quite sure who. But wonderful, wonderful, just atmosphere to create this old story, and we loved working on this. I think people were quite surprised when they found out that we were doing it. And it's recently been submitted to a couple of publishers, and one of the publishers said, this is the favourite play of all of those that you've submitted. It is going to come out very soon. It will be available. I can't say anything about it, which is so frustrating, but maybe I'll add something, or certainly in the notes underneath. But I'm really looking forward to finally it being released. It was released as a download play. It didn't get much coverage, but it should, I think, now have the opportunity to get out there. This is the review we got right at the very end. An adaptation of George Eliot novel might seem something of a departure, but as the play contains only words used in the novel, and as Eliot has a great turn of phrase, the production exhibits narrative characteristics of all the other OYT shows. Writer and director Mark Wheeler has created a beautifully taut and compelling script, well, there's a quote, which is brought to life with immense skill. Staged as a promenade performance in the slightly smoky space of the transformed auditorium, this was a production of great flair, originality and power. The musical accompaniment, composed by Paul Ibbott, added greatly to the atmosphere and feel of the piece. I haven't said very much about Paul's work, but Paul's work in this was fantastic and underscored the whole play, and just wonderful. As I was so lucky to work with Jack Simmons, Dave Jones, and now Paul came on board, and again putting in place the team who were going to do I Love You Mum later on, and Kat on costumes. I mean, and she loved doing this kind of thing. Kat Chivers. With the youthful cast showed great confidence and command of the material, navigating their way around the space with great panache. On opening night, the best way of managing the audience, who were wrong-footed at times, was still being worked out. We managed to sort that for the second night. That's always a lovely challenge of promenade theatre. As I say, it's my last promenade production I directed, and it's the best. And it's a lovely little tribute to my dad, John Wheeler.